Good evening. Comprehension, which makes up the biggest chunk of questions CSAT, is not confusing and subjective. But if you're using the right strategies to solve the questions, then comprehension is as objective as mathematics. You just have to apply a certain strategy or a formula and you end up getting the right answer. Like other aptitude tests, comprehension on CSAT follows the rules of evidence-based reading comprehension. And because CSAT needs to reflect the required attitude and perspective of civil servants, so right answers need to reflect these as well. You have to take care that you avoid over-understanding the passage, as it will make you interpret it according to your own competence, biases, prejudices, and you will make inferences while being judgmental. Well, we all love to be judgmental and believe that our own interpretations and inferences are always correct. UPSC penalizes you for all this. So let's start learning.
I welcome you all to this guided PYQ practice session. Please access this training on a bigger screen of a desktop or a laptop, as some slides have a lot of text on them. So it will be of a smaller font size when you view it on a smaller screen of a smartphone. Also keep a pen and paper handy so that you can jot down notes on anything new or radically different from what you're aware of. To benefit more from this session, to benefit better from this session, I want you to watch the video carefully. When prompted, please pause the video and attempt the question honestly for a change. Keep record of why you rejected or chose a particular answer choice. Watch the rest of the video and you can pause, rewind and rewatch to understand better. The plan for this online practice session is that as a first step, you will attempt one question honestly, attempt the question with the strategy which has been taught in class, and once you've attempted the questions, then watch the rest of the video. Then I will reiterate the steps needed to crack this question. We look at the right method to read the passage. We will identify the type of passage in order to preempt the inherent challenges which different kinds of passages have. So if you identify the type of passage, then you will automatically also understand what problems can come in case of this passage and what kind of questions would definitely follow. We'll also look at and understand the required attitude for solving questions. We'll identify the type of question and based upon what type of question it is, we'll look at the strategy which is the best one for this kind of a question. The question at hand is a forward application question, so we'll study the strategy of forward application questions once again. Then we'll apply the strategy for forward application questions on the given question to understand it in a better manner. All of these knowledge nuggets that I'm talking about are available on my Facebook group for UPSC aspirants, which is UPSC Prep Content. So let's look at the passage and the first question. This is set A of 2023 UPSC Prelims GS Paper 2. Please pause the video at this stage and attempt this question in 150 seconds or 2.5 minutes. Please pause and attempt it. Okay, let's proceed ahead now. The first step in the whole process is to read the passage in the right manner. Handling of comprehension questions becomes easier if you read the passage casually with a cool mind. And you should not focus on trying to understand each and everything written in the passage, and you should not focus upon trying to remember everything, which is even more difficult to do. So in the limited amount of time that you get on the examination, you simply cannot afford to focus on understanding each and everything written in the passage, and you cannot focus on trying to remember everything which is written in the passage, because if you try doing this, you will not be able to understand each and everything, you will not be able to remember everything, but this will just give you an added amount of tension and butterflies in your stomach. Your brain will stop working and you'll not be able to really utilize the ability of your brain as such. So you all have a great brain, and if it is not overloaded with the tension of understanding and remembering everything, only then will it perform excellently and you can develop a sense of the passage. So reading of the passage has to be done casually with a cool mind. You'll automatically understand as much as possible. The second step in the whole process is to identify the type of the passage, which helps you understand what inherent challenges would definitely be present in this kind of a passage. If you look at this passage, This passage is discussing conflicts among different states in India over river waters and recommends that key to ensuring balance between competing demands of various stakeholders is a basin-based approach to allocate water amongst the constituent regions and states. And then it gives parameters on the basis of which this approach has to be taken. So this is clearly an argumentative passage because the author of the passage clearly has a viewpoint and he's trying to convince you about that particular viewpoint. In case of all argumentative passages, you have to identify the viewpoint of the author, you have to identify the author's reasoning which is supporting the viewpoint, and the central message being conveyed by the author. In case of argumentative passages, the language of the passage is comparatively difficult to read and understand and to develop a sense of the passage. Moreover, difficult questions can easily be framed on argumentative passages. So if there's an argumentative passage which appears, you will definitely see more difficult questions. The third step out here is to develop the right attitude for solving these questions. All aptitude tests, including the CSAT, they use something called as evidence-based reading comprehension rules, which means the right answer has to be 100% supported by the passage information and not by the information that you already have in your memory. CSAT is a civil services aptitude test, so required answers have to be modified according to the attitude expected of a civil servant also. Attitude and perception expected of a civil servant. So this becomes a sheer role play question and you have to play the role of a civil servant. As a civil servant, your answers need to focus on mitigating problems, solving problems, and be focused upon the development of the country. So the required attitude expected out of you is a prescriptive attitude. A prescriptive attitude which mitigates problems, solves problems, and focuses on development of the country. This is where the right answer can step out of the passage. The next step is to identify the type of question. Based upon the type of question that you identify, you can go in for using the specific strategy which that particular question requires. Every question has a particular method of solving. Or let's say a single question can be solved by several methods. But out of those methods, there is one particular method which works wonders with that particular question type. And this is a method which takes less amount of time. There is a least amount of chance of you all making a silly mistake also. Now, if I look at the question out here, the question said, which one of the following statements best reflects the most rational, practical, and immediate action required to ensure fair and equitable allocation of water to different stakeholders? Now, if this particular question is asking you for immediate action to be taken, then this question is somewhat similar to implied idea or inference questions, but it asks you to go one step further and apply what you've learned in the passage to an absolutely new situation by asking you to suggest the most rational, practical, and immediate action required to ensure fair and equitable allocation of water to different stakeholders. As a result, this is definitely a further application question. Further application questions can be framed in various manners. For example, they can ask you which of the following should logically follow the passage, or which one of the following should logically precede the passage. They can ask you, based on the passage, which of the following strategies should be used to solve the problem, something similar to the question at hand. They can ask you, based on the passage, which one of the following actions should be taken to solve the problem. Or this passage is most probably taken from which one of the following sources, newspapers, autobiography, research paper, a super specialized book, etc., a general interest book as well. What, according to you, is a possible profession of the author, or for which one of the following audience has the author written this particular passage? Now, the last three type of questions have so far not come in case of CSAT by UPSC. That does not mean that we should not practice these questions, because UPSC loves giving surprises. This year it gave a lot of surprises in GS Paper 1 as well as Paper 2. So you need to be ready for all kinds of preparation. Now, the following questions are interdisciplinary and they can also be termed as further application questions, as they ask you to apply your understanding to something which is not mentioned in the passage. For example, the question can ask you, the author is likely to consider which one of the following examples to prove his point. Or the author would probably consider which of the following a good example of her theory. Or with which of the following statements would the author most probably agree. These look like critical reasoning questions or argumentative questions. Moreover, these questions test whether you have a casual but holistic understanding of the passage, And based upon that, can you apply that understanding to something which is not mentioned in the passage? Moreover, along with argument style questions, these are the only questions whose answers are not mentioned in the passage. The critical reasoning questions are also called as argument style questions. So based upon the language and views of the author, you may have to decide what should be the logical next action to be taken, what will precede the passage or follow the last sentence of the passage, what is the profession of the author, the audience for which the author wrote the passage, and the source of the passage. These things are definitely not written anywhere in the passage, but based upon your understanding of the passage, you need to pick up an answer. Take care that you have to understand the context of the passage. Only then can you pick up an answer which is right according to the context. The right answer has to be relevant to the context. The right answer will neither be too broad nor too narrow. And in terms of process of elimination, please kick out any answer choices which are irrelevant, any answer choices which are too broad or too narrow. Moreover, the right method to ace further application questions is that you have to develop the ability to understand the passage. You have to develop the ability to understand the context of the question. You need to be great at process elimination, and then you've got to do a lot of learning from your own mistakes. These can make you perfect at these questions, at the further application questions. So let's move on to the passage and the question. If you look at this particular passage, now we will look at the ideal way of handling comprehension passages and questions. When I encounter this passage, I need to do a cool and casual reading of the passage, which should make me realize that it is an argumentative passage. So I need to identify the viewpoint of the author. And viewpoint of the author is something which is mentioned here, which talks about key to ensuring balance between competing demands of various stakeholders is a basin-based approach to allocate water amongst constituent regions and states. It also mentions that this has to be done in a fair manner. This is the viewpoint of the author. Now, after I'm clear about this particular part, that this is an argumentative passage, and then I step into the question. The question says, which one of the following statements best reflects the most rational, practical, and immediate action required to ensure fair and equitable allocation of water to different stakeholders? This very clearly is focused upon immediate action, which is required to ensure fair and equitable allocation of water to different stakeholders. Read this question carefully a second time. This question asks you to go one step further and apply what you've learned in the passage to a new situation by asking you to suggest the most rational, practical, and immediate action required to ensure fair and equitable allocation of water to different stakeholders. This is what makes it a clear further application question. Now, if you're looking at an action required to ensure fair and equitable allocation of water to different stakeholders, we can go in for reading the last two sentences to get an idea about the author's perception. And it basically talks about we need to ensure balance between competing demands, and we need to allocate a fair share of water to people, the stakeholders. Based upon this, if I look at the four answer choices, then it is answer choice C which talks about an immediate action which can be done. It talks about water channels between regions of water surplus and regions of water deficit should be created. On the other hand, if I look at other options, say for example, I look at option A, it says a national, pragmatic, legal and policy framework for water allocation should be made. This option A is a long-term solution. It is not an immediate action which is required. That is the reason why option A gets kicked out. It gets rejected. Option B says all river systems of the country should be linked and huge aquifers should be created. Now, option B may have its own pros, but it is not the next action to be taken for ensuring fair and equitable allocation of water to different stakeholders. So, option B also gets kicked out. If I look at option D, it says to mitigate water crisis, water demand of sectors such as agriculture and industry should be reduced. This option D needs to be kicked out because it irrelevantly focuses upon mitigation of the problem and doesn't focus upon the immediate action to be taken for equitable distribution of water. That's the reason why we kick this out, and option C becomes our chosen answer. Take a moment to review the whole thing. Okay. See, this was the first question of comprehension questions of 2023 Prelims Paper, GS Paper 2 or CSAT. You can realize the complexity and the challenges which are involved. In later video sessions, I plan to pick and explain other questions that have appeared on CSAT paper. Until then, I want you to tell me clearly whether you like this video session, and you have to give me suggestions to improve the later videos. I also want you to subscribe to this YouTube channel so that you can automatically get the future instructional videos that I plan to release weekly or on a fortnightly basis. I also want you to share this video on with your fellow aspirants so that others can also benefit. That's all for today. Bye.